Welcome to Define Play, where I interview fascinating people to find out what play means to them. My name is Michael Mirza, and my guest today is Allie Szczecinski. She's a special education teacher, a social and emotional learning coach, and a content creator as Miss Behavior. She's also a longtime friend and the author of brand new book, Their Best Behavior, as well as Roaring Mad Riley. In our conversation, we talked about her creative process behind writing her books, her thoughts on the latest developments in education and teaching, as well as how she plays in her personal life and with her family. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope you find some of this practical. Even if you're not a teacher, there is so much wisdom in here for you. So sit back and enjoy the conversation with me and Allie. Thanks. So we are filming this in early May.
Early May.
We're filming this in early May. About a month from now, by the time this episode comes out, you will have a new book coming out.
Yes.
Tomorrow.
Right, which is wild.
June 11th. How are you feeling about it, and what can you tell us about it?
It feels very full circle to me as someone who has spent my whole career as a teacher. Now I'm writing a book and delivering content to teachers in a way that I wish that there was this book for me when I was new or starting out in the field. So it feels really cool. And it also feels just exciting that it's finally coming to fruition. I feel like I've been waiting for this, and now it's here. So.
Yes. Has this process, of course, it's a very different focus from your other book, Roaring Mad Riley, which we plan to talk about later. Has this process felt different? In what ways?
Yes. I had to put almost on a different hat. When I was writing a children's book, my audience was me as a child. It was my students. At the time, I had one child and she was a baby. So I was thinking, as she gets older, what do I want her to know about anger specifically, which is the topic of the book? And in this upcoming book, it's more for the adults. What do I want the adults to know as people who are going to be guiding my students, guiding my children in school?
I love that idea. It sounds like with both, there was sort of this notion of there was something missing. You figured out your own way, but you recognized a spot or a niche or an idea that wasn't being covered, and you had a unique perspective to offer to it. And that's a really cool thing.
Right.
What would have been some of the inspirations you've taken in from other authors or your own experiences?
Sure. So when I started teaching, I was a special ed teacher. So I had students with a variety of needs. At the beginning of my career, it was more students who have cognitive disabilities. And I moved into teaching children with very significant behavior disorders. Okay. And I would think every day, how did we get here? Right? Like, there are so many skills that these kids are missing. Like, how did this happen? You know, is there anything we could have done? In some cases, no, Okay. And in other cases, maybe. And that's what I really started to focus on, and it became a passion project of mine. What are these foundational things that every kid should learn? But there's also some kids who are going to need it a lot more explicitly because it's just not going to get picked up in the nuance, right? You need someone to sit down with you and talk to you about this more explicitly. And that's kind of really where it started, was kids who need it the most, but also realizing we all need it.
You open your new book by saying behavior is a form of communication. Talk to me more about that, because I can see aspects of that as a parent.
Sure.
But in the classroom and in your parenting, what does behavior as communication look like?
So as a teacher, you will see on a daily basis, if you just strolled into your daughter's classroom, you'd see kids who are sitting there just doing exactly what the teacher's asking. And you would see kids who are staring up at the ceiling, at the vent, and looking at the tiny piece of paper that's fluttering in there, and you're like, that kid has no idea what the teacher's talking about. You'd have the kids in the back who are, rolling pencils to each other. There's a variety of things going on. And you have to think, why? What is going on? Why is student A paying very close attention to what's going on? And students B, C, and D are off on planet Mars? What is going on? And we have to think about that rather than hey, student C, pay attention. Yes, but also what's going on that you're not? What are you communicating to us through your behavior? The one who's looking up here is communicating something different than the one who is socializing with a peer rolling a pencil back and forth, right? They're communicating different needs. And that's like a silly example, but it comes through in so many ways, whether it's like really challenging behaviors or kids who are exhibiting kind of different types of things. And we can kind of nuance down to that and realize like, oh, maybe they're having some like difficulty understanding the concepts. You know, maybe there's a learning deficit here, and you know, you can really dig in and kind of figure out what that behavior is really telling you.
Absolutely. I mean, the frustration of not being able to express a feeling or an idea that you internally, it makes sense to you, like, but maybe you can't put words to it. I mean, I know that feeling. It's maddening.
Yeah, we all do, right?
And do you observe differences in the classroom environment and then more in like recess and playtime? Like what kinds of behaviors are still being communicated between class and recess that are different?
Sure. It really depends on the kid, but there's so many kids who struggle at recess because of social dynamics that are tricky. And also kids who just come alive during recess because they have the space. And I find that there's a stigma still in schools where we're saying that like play is for recess and recess is 20 minutes and you got to go back inside and it's back to the books, which is true. Kids are at school to learn, but also play is a form of learning. And kids like divulge and come up with so much of their understanding through play that I feel like that's another piece of it too, is we should be seeing recess as less of a separate place, but more of an extension of what they're already doing in class.
Absolutely. And that's going to vary so much about age, ability, culture, school setting. You know, how much you can realistically work play into the curriculum, wide spectrum, right? And so, you know, do you have advice on how a school that's pretty rigid in its structure and maybe doesn't have much creative freedom versus one that's much more open-ended? What would you say to someone who says, like, I don't feel like I have that much ability to work play, maybe even not just for teachers, but just in general, like, if it feels very constrained, are there ways where play can still be worked in a productive way?
I think about my daughter's classroom. She attends a public Montessori school. So when we think of Montessori, I think even if you don't know much about the philosophy of education, you think it's pretty like free and open, right? And it is. However, it's highly structured. So there are no toys in her classroom. There's no break spot really where they like can go over and play dolls necessarily. But every element in her classroom is playful. All of it is self-directed. It's very intentional, but it's very playful. And I love that for her. I think that's amazing. I'm not personally a Montessori trained teacher, but I love the concept of it. And I feel like it jives so well with me. I feel like in a future life or a previous life, I was a Montessori teacher because I feel like I understand it so much. And in my non-Montessori way, I feel like that's the way that I teach is, yes, you have standards you have to hit. Yes, this project has to get done. Yes, there's a test tomorrow. But we can do a lot of this playfully. There are ways that we can make a song out of it. The students are working together to create, for example, a farm stand where they're working together in groups to create all the different types of materials you'd find at a farm stand. And the kids are creating it together in groups and they're cutting it out. But within that, they're learning, how does a carrot grow? How does an apple grow? What does that look like? What does it mean to actually harvest the fruit and the vegetables and bring them to the farm stand? And then they're using STEM to create an actual farm stand, right? And you're hitting all these standards, but you're doing it in a way that like uses imagination, uses play. And as a teacher, 100 times more fun.
I can imagine.
You like your job so much more when you get to do that.
I want to talk about how carrots grow. That's fun, awesome.
You know, and like a kid who's like never thought about a carrot before is like, I'm so into this, you know?
That's
and it can tap into so many different learning styles too, while you're still absolutely hitting those curricular standards.
And also, side note, what a gift that your daughter attends a public Montessori school. That is a rare gem.
It was a gem to find, and I won't lie, we hit the actual lottery getting her into that school.
I'm familiar with that system.
Yes, and so we feel like so blessed and lucky every day that she has that opportunity to at least even see if Montessori is a fit for her. I never had that opportunity to even know if that was a place for my brain to thrive. And so far, so good with her. It's been a great fit, but yeah, we're very lucky that she even has that opportunity.
That's so cool. Because I think there's only, 2 or 3 in the Chicago public school system?
I believe there's 3. Yeah.
The public Montessori schools.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, we were talking about recess. I want to now make this a little more personal for you.
Okay.
Tell me about a few defining memories of your own recess experiences as a kid.
Yeah. So I had such a unique friend experience in elementary school, and I still know them, and they're still my best friends today. I've known these kids since I was in kindergarten or earlier. And so I feel like, not to say there wasn't like kid drama going on, because of course there was, right? We're humans. There's going to be some, some fight or drama or situation, right? However, we were so innocent up until high school. It was just the way it was. We were just in this little bubble of like goofy inside jokes from first grade, and we're in middle school, and we were kind of an insular group, but it was a pretty big group of us from our just kid days of running around outside in the summertime, riding our bikes and writing with chalk and just playing in like a creek that was down the street, So I feel like my recess times really remind me kind of that. It's those same, it reminds me of like a summer day kind of.
Dreamy.
And a lot of swinging. I have so many memories of us like on the swings, just doing like games on the swings and who could be higher and jumping off the swings. There was a lot of swings.
Swings are incredible.
Right, still love them.
Yeah, randomly I just realized my daughter's school doesn't have swings on the playground.
Ours doesn't either.
What is that a thing now?
I'm not really sure why.
Are we done with swings?
I know. At my personal school I teach at, there's multiple swings. So I don't know.
Okay, great. Okay, so swings are still alive.
Yeah,
and well.
they're still alive.
Maybe it's like, they're very competitive.
Sure.
You can't.
Yeah, perhaps they break easily. I don't know.
Some liabilities
Maintenance,
there.
right? I don't know.
Let's go on the record and say I'm pro swings.
I am too.
Okay, in case there's any debate about that.
For adults and children, right?
That's fun to imagine just living the dream, just riding your bikes and being
like
with your
ideal
friends.
childhood. Yes, I was very lucky.
Okay, what aspects of your childhood self are still true for you today?
I mean, as a kid, I always loved art, drawing, anything with sidewalk chalk, just art in general, more like drawing art, painting art. And I still love that. And I find myself constantly doing that with my kids.
Okay.
And so luckily they have, they give in to me and they like to do art with me too, especially my daughter. The 2-year-old, I'm not sure he really fully grasps art yet, but he does like throw me a bone here and there and will scribble with me and stuff. So, but she loves sidewalk chalk and art and projects, and it like just fills me up so much because I'm like, that's what I did with my mom. My whole childhood was like a lot of coloring, a lot of drawing. And it is fun to do that with her. Cool. So I still get to do a lot of that stuff, which I might do anyway if I didn't have kids, but it's really fun to do that with a kid. Did
you have a favorite subject or like subject matter or thing you liked to draw or create or paint?
A lot of cartooning. Like I like cartoon stuff. Yeah. Like I've never been like a realistic artist. It's all the cartoons.
Do you ever make like comics or anything?
Yes, all the time.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I feel the same in the sense that I loved to draw as a kid.
Yeah.
And I stayed pretty active with drawing until probably about halfway through high school, and then started learning about graphic design and video work and stuff. So had a different creative outlet. But because of my kids, I have a reason to draw again. And of course, not that we needed a reason. Like either of us could go draw at any time. But it's nice when that excuse comes in.
Yes, it brings it back up. And it's like, I do love doing this. Right? Yes, it is fun.
And now it's like, oh, wait, I didn't need an excuse. I could have,
of course.
I could have done that this whole time.
It was always in there.
That's really fun. So now as you're sharing things with your kids, are there aspects of, the way you played that you're shaping and you're inviting them into? Are there aspects of yourself as a kid that you see in your children?
Yes. My daughter is very, very stubborn, which is like, my parents will say to me regularly, like, you're welcome. Like, surprise, full circle.
I always say the same thing, like, one day you'll have a kid just like you.
Yeah, and like, now you do, right. So we are actually pretty different, but there are so many threads of her that I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, this was probably really hard for my parents. Mm-hmm. This is very tricky, because you don't ever want to squash it. Mm-hmm. However, sometimes you got to shape it a little bit because like, you can't just walk around life doing that. Of course. She's finding her way and kind of realizing what that looks like. But as knowing what I know now about, my love of social emotional learning and my understanding of the importance of not shaming emotions, like really finding myself like sometimes like reverting back to things that I used to hear, about like, it's too much or it's too this, you know, and these kinds of things where I'm like, no, like stop for a second, and I'll have to like, I'll just apologize to her. Like, I didn't mean it like that. What I mean by this is it felt really loud, or, whatever the actual piece behind it is, because any of the things that like I carried around with me about being like a strong-willed little girl that were not positive, I want to try my best to do that different for her, just because we know better now.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, we know better. And we now have the ability to say, what I probably needed to hear at that age was blank. That I imagine shows up in teaching as well.
Totally.
Where you can have that empathy to say, maybe what I would have needed in that situation, but I didn't recognize then, was blank.
Right.
Can you unpack? I've probably heard the term social emotional learning, but can you unpack that a little bit more?
Sure. So social emotional learning is the concept of your emotions, these ideas of self-awareness, self-management, decision-making, friendship skills, growth mindset, and kind of how that interplays in the way that you live and the way that you function. And I heard this at a conference once, just in regards to education, where if you think about like the school day as a meal, and you think of like maybe math being the main course and like reading as a side dish, or you've got social studies and science as like the seasonings, whatever, you're thinking of it like this, but social emotional learning is the plate that holds it up. And so if you don't have that, you could do it, but it's going to be really messy, right?
Okay.
You need to be able to manage yourself and your materials, and you need to be able to focus. You need to be able to name your emotions when you're doing certain things that are frustrating or too easy for you.
Wow.
A variety of other things, right? In order to be able to be your best learner. So that's like a big part of what not only is my passion, but what I actually do in schools is really fostering that and helping teachers find ways to weave that into everything that they're doing.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, and yet also seems quite revolutionary.
Right.
It doesn't seem like that is a lot of the ways, at least from my experience as a kid, that was necessarily the bedrock of how teaching was approached. Is that a newer concept?
Yes, I would say in the last like 20 years is when it really got almost like coined as a term. Before, people would say like, of course you have to teach kids social skills and things, which yes, but also
but
there's
social
more
skills is different than emotional intelligence.
Yes, and understanding emotional intelligence, being able to say like, I'm frustrated right now, and this is why, this is what I need. And knowing that that's not just for my students I had that had significant emotional disabilities. That's for the kids sitting over here doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing and like right on grade level. Like they also need to know how to name their emotions, right? This is we call that tier 1, like it's for everybody.
Okay.
Like everybody needs to know that.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. It's very, because I said social skills is not the same thing. Like simply just being polite or having manners, that's not the same as emotional intelligence. Okay.
Yeah, or learning how to apologize. Like sure, you need to know how to do that, but it's more than just that.
Yes, because it's not just a formality. There's something interpersonal happening there.
Yeah. And like these conversations that we've been having where we're saying things like, I didn't really know that about myself yet, but also letting kids know like, hey, when your breathing starts getting like really rapid and you're like sweating, getting a little like jumpy, like you might be angry or really nervous about what's about to happen. Like there's a name for that, and you're not the only person who feels it. Like a lot of people do, This is normal.
Yes. Okay. So perfect segue into, I said earlier, I want to talk about this book.
Yes.
You wrote this amazing book, Roaring Mad Riley, which does a fantastic job of talking about those things that happen in the body as anger is picking up. And the art style is incredible.
I love it too.
And what were some of like kind of the inspirations for this book in particular? You said this a little bit earlier about kind of like for your newer book, but for this book in particular.
Yeah. So Riley was, I never really knew who Riley was until I really saw the illustrations and all this. And I'm like, yeah, I think that's Riley. I think I found her. I wanted it, number one, to be a female character because we often ascribe anger as just a male or little boy kind of emotion, and that is incorrect. We all experience anger. And I wanted to take anger and make it less of like, oh, that's a terrible feeling, like don't feel that way. And like, yeah, it doesn't feel comfortable, but like it's very normal. Like you're going to be angry probably multiple times every day. That's a very normal human emotion. And like that's okay. We just have to be safe with it.
Yes.
What we often find is, as a parent of young children, when we get angry, we kick, stomp, bite, hit, throw things, right? That's just the way that it is.
Yeah.
And okay, you're feeling that big feeling, but what can we do instead that can also help us still experience anger, but not be unsafe about it, right?
Like safety is a great theme in here when he talks about like throwing things, like and how that impacts. That's a safety issue,
right?
But does such a good job of talking about that awareness of the body as well. And I think there's many adults who are not. I mean, myself included, where I'm like, I'm not thinking about what's happening in my amygdala at this point.
Right.
Anyway, so if you need a wonderful resource on dealing with anger and kids, Roaring Mad Riley is an awesome resource. So you're an author now. You're also a content creator.
Yeah.
And you've made some amazing work and
Thanks.
Really like have this cool community that is following behind you. Would you be willing to just give us a little bit of a behind the scenes on your creative process as you were preparing content or lessons, anything? Like, how do you work?
So I love to read, and that could be fiction, it could be nonfiction. I like reading nerdy articles and research about this kind of stuff. And when I find something that resonates with me, I've got like a bunch of notes on my phone. Yep. I've got notes on my computer. I'm like constantly writing things down or trying to remember it. And then when I'm able to sit down, which I will not lie, not often, right? Full-time working, I have a small business, I have 2 children, right? Yeah. But when I do, I'm able to carve out the time, I sit down and kind of go through it and like, how would I want to show this to somebody else? It resonated with me. I don't want it to live here, or in this note on my phone. I want to share it and why this was impactful for me. So that's usually where I start with it and then kind of just, spurt it out the best that I can.
Cool. That's great. Is there any additional projects you're currently working on that you're allowed to share about, or ideas of things you haven't done yet that maybe you would like to do in the future?
Yeah, so I am very interested in the concept of restorative practices, which is things that it encompasses many things. People use this in a variety of different workplaces. There's a lot in like the justice system where they're using restorative practices, and it's a big thing in schools. And the more I read about it, the more I realize I think it's a little misunderstood. Okay. So that's kind of a new thing that I'm thinking about is how can I, break it down a little bit and make it more tangible.
Restorative processes.
Yeah, practices.
Practices,
yeah.
Okay. Cool. Oh, I can't wait to see what you create for that. I'll be watching. So when you said free time, a little hard to come by.
Yes, a little hard to come by.
When you do get that free time, how do you like to play and relax with your family and then by yourself?
Sure. Alone time is actually really important to me. Yeah. And I learned that when I was in college because I loved my roommates so much. And I was like, I just want to be around them all the time. And then I would find like, no, I don't. And I'm like really irritated and agitated. And I don't know why. I'm around all these people I like. And I kind of realized like, wow, when you live in a room with someone and you're never alone, this is really hard for me. Yeah. Like I don't do well with that. So for me, recharging is also like, so I can play, right? Yeah. And I can play well.
Yes.
I love playing with my kids. They're such a blast. My son is very into cars right now. Anything with wheels and vehicles, which is so not my norm. I don't really know anything about cars. And neither does he, but he like loves to explore them.
He knows the essentials.
Yeah, he knows they go beep, beep. And we say that a lot.
I mean, what more do you need to know?
Yeah, beep, beep, and round, round is like the big deal. But it's so fun. It's something that like I have no interest in at all. It would be cars, but I like have found myself like loving being around cars. You know what I mean? We see like a construction vehicle and I'm like pulling to the side, like you gotta look at it because it's so fun to explore it with somebody else. Yeah. So it's funny how like play kind of shifts, right? Like if there was a car themed playground, like I would travel to the other side of the country to go let him play on it, just to watch him do it and do it with him. So that has been really fun. But for me, I love to exercise. So like trying out different things is fun for me. I find that to be sort of like a version of play. And then art. Yeah, I love to draw. So cool. Yeah, I'm like always outside at the park with the kids, like making murals on the sidewalk and stuff. That's fun for me.
When you imagine your kids getting older, are there activities you look forward to sharing with them that you're not currently doing?
Sure. My family was a big baseball family.
Okay.
So I never played baseball, but my brother did. And that was I feel like a huge part of my childhood was like going to baseball games or watching baseball games on TV. Everyone in my family basically like played or watched baseball. So that will be fun in the future, just kind of seeing if that takes shape with either of my kids. And I grew up figure skating and I love to ice skate. So my daughter has taken lessons and it's just like been tricky with schedules, but over time I hope that we can do that a little bit together.
Figure skating.
Yeah, super fun.
Were you doing like jumps and stuff?
Jumps, not anything like Olympic worthy, but
That's amazing.
it's a fun like skill to have.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked playing. Hockey was the sport I played as a kid that I was most accomplished at.
Sure.
Which is not saying much, but hockey is where I felt most competent. But
Yeah.
skating, just the act of skating,
Very hard.
I mean, hard, yes, but when it clicks, it is amazing.
Super
There is
fun.
nothing like that.
And you don't, it's like riding a bike. You can get back on and you're like, oh, I know how to do this.
Yeah.
It's really like an interesting thing with your brain that
Totally.
you just can still always do it.
Yeah.
But that'll be fun
Yeah.
in the future.
I think I would probably have a hard time doing a hockey stop. But
Yeah.
maybe, is it not called a hockey stop? Because
It is.
everybody needs to stop that way.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it is, even in figure skating, that's called a hockey stop.
But like,
or snowplow stop.
Right. But the basics of skating I
Yeah.
could do again.
Yeah.
And I could get back to a place where I could do a hockey stop. Because
Yeah.
that's just like a mental confidence
Right.
thing, right?
Right. You just got to like get yourself steady on the ice, then you could figure it out. Yeah.
That's very cool. I
Super
kind of
fun.
forgot that figure skating
Yeah.
was a thing for you. Have you ever seen like a professional show?
Oh yeah, many. I watch when the Olympics or even just like the competitive season is on. Like my husband is always just like, guys, we have to like go to the basement because I'm like watching it like people watch the Super Bowl. Like I'm very into it.
Is there like a particular country you like to root for?
I mean the U.S.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But they've got a pretty good program.
We've got a great set of skaters.
Okay.
Like watch out, Winter Olympics is coming.
Amazing. Any other thoughts you want to share on play in the classroom, play in parenting, thoughts on play professionally or personally?
Sure. When I think of play, and I think of play at school, especially when I think of play in special education, even more specifically, I think that often when we have kids who are neurodivergent in whatever way, they maybe are autistic, they've got some sensory processing needs, a cognitive impairment, ADHD, whatever you want to call it, often they play in ways that typical adults are like, you're not playing that right, right? You're taking the car wheel and you're just spinning it and looking at it. Like that's not how you play with a car, but that's how that kid plays with a car, and that's fine.
Okay.
And like lining things up, a lot of times we'll see that and it's like, we got to stop the kid from lining things up. And the question is, why? Like that child's finding a lot of joy in lining things up and it's not hurting anybody.
Yeah.
So something that I have really grown into, because I will say at the beginning of my career, I was like, that's so true. We got to get them to, play with a car and have the cars race each other and stuff.
Yeah.
But why? That's maybe what I would do with a car, but that's not right or wrong. It's just one way to play with the toy car. And just being able to say that there's no wrong way to play with something, no wrong way to play in general, is just almost kind of like a revolutionary concept for some people.
Right.
Like, yes, teaching kids to play in the sense that you want them to find what they like to play with. You want them to play with something, right?
Yes.
What do you like to do? What's a leisure activity for you? Yes. But once they get there, just like, let them have fun with it,
Totally.
Right.
Yeah, there's a discovery there that is unique to each person.
Yeah.
We're mindful of safety to
Of
make sure
course,
like
right.
that's the only wrong form of play, right?
Right.
Would be like this hurts somebody else.
Right.
Or yourself. But yeah, I think that's cool. Okay, so then now I will ask you your definition of play.
Sure. Play is just joy in general. What are you doing that's bringing you joy? And you're choosing it for yourself. I think that's a big part of it, is it's pretty self-directed. Like for me, outside of my son, you would not have found me being like, my joy is in like searching for cars on the internet. That's my form of play. No, but like, and that's fine because it's someone else's and like it's self-directed. I love to draw, so that would be something that I like to do, and that's my version of play. So I think you get to define it kind of for yourself in a sense too.
And it's infectious and social because you now appreciate cars because you were like, oh, I know what this would mean to my son.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Okay. So I want to talk about one other thing about family, and I want to give you an opportunity to talk about something really important happening in the life of your family.
Yeah.
Talking about joy and difficult things existing alongside each other. I think I'm just going to let you answer this. And if you wouldn't mind just looking at the camera, we're going to make an ask here for those who are following Define Play. There's something really important happening in Allie's life and Allie's family, and I want to give you a chance to talk about it.
Yeah. Almost 30 years ago, my husband had his first kidney transplant. He was diagnosed with sort of an odd, rare autoimmune disorder called IgA nephropathy, and that caused his kidneys to fail. So he was in and out of a lot of different treatments, and it was eventually determined, like, yes, he is going to need a new kidney. And through kind of almost at the time, a stranger, more of an acquaintance at the time, he's now our family. But he donated his kidney to him, and it was such a gift. Typically, if you know anything about organ donation, hearing that my husband has had one kidney for almost 30 years is shocking because they don't typically last that long. So thankfully, he has had the ability to take care of his body really well and be healthy, but he is currently in need of another kidney. So at this time, what we're doing is we're really just searching for people who are willing to step up and potentially donate their kidney to my husband. And it feels like a huge ask, and I won't lie, it kind of is, but also it might not be as big as you think. I would encourage you to learn more about it or to, contact me or, some of the other organizations that are surrounding organ donation if this is of interest to you. And if it comes down to it and my husband has a kidney from someone else, thank you for your curiosity, and I want you to dig into it because again, like we've been talking about play, like that type of thing is infectious and something that you're drawn to, you should pay attention to. And so if that's something that's curious to you, stay with it. And, perhaps somebody else is the person who might need it from you, or you just sharing that, that curiosity and that information with somebody else might spark something new too.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Allie. And I will put information in the captions below where you can apply. It's a non-committal process where you will enter some information. That's my understanding, right? And then they may get in touch with you to learn a little bit more, and you might have the chance to be a real hero in a very real, tangible way. So thank you for sharing that. And I know that's it is a hard, big ask, but it's also what a beautiful way to invite somebody in to do something that could quite literally change somebody's life really tangibly forever.
Yeah,
so
it's a pretty outrageous process, but also so simple when it comes down to it at the same time. It's an odd dichotomy.
Yeah,
but
you only need one.
Right.
Yeah.
You really only need one.
And I mean, amazing that the first donor, like you said, became family to you. I mean, how beautiful.
Yeah. Best man in our wedding.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Okay, cool. So absolutely, please check that out. Look for the link in the description below to learn more about how you might express some interest in potentially being a donor. Allie, thank you so much for this. Is there anything else you want to share with us? Anything on your mind or you're excited about? Or
I mean, honestly, I'm excited that there's just more of a platform to talk about play. I feel like, especially in schools, as someone with a school hat that I'm usually wearing, play is kind of like taking a back seat because there's so many other things that kids are expected to learn, but play is equally as important.
Yes, please. To all the teachers out there, thank you for your hard work. You are doing such amazing work that you I imagine, are often not fully thanked for in the ways you deserve. You probably see this in some of the folks that you work with. So thank you. And to the extent that you can work in play, that's probably a really great thing. So as a parent, I thank you. So thank you, Allie, for your time, for sharing your wisdom. And keep up the awesome work. You're doing amazing things. And I think what you are saying about behavior and emotions and these restorative practices, there's so much to look forward to on what you're going to put out there. And I look forward to continuing to learn from you.
Thanks.
So, thank you, Allie.
Allie's passion and care for children is so evident and genuine to me. And it really speaks to me and motivates me to think more deeply about behavior and play and how these things all come together. If you want to learn more about Allie as well as her family and this really important ask related to a kidney for her husband, you can find out more on defineplay.com or in the caption below. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share it with somebody who you think might enjoy it. And if you're not already subscribed, we really appreciate it if you subscribe and follow along and give this a like as well. We hope you'll join us next time. Thanks again, friends. We'll catch you later. Bye-bye.